Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. It was meant to be a peaceful weekend, just a father, his son, and a remote mountain cabin. But when they arrived, they found empty tequila bottles, broken plates, and evidence someone had been living there. The cameras were cut, the locks were picked, and that was just the beginning. It was supposed to be a quiet weekend. Just me and my son Jason tucked away in the Blue Ridge Mountains, in the kind of silence you can only get a few hours away from people. I'd bought the cabin less than 6 months ago, an old sturdy place with real timber bones, polished floors, and the smell of cedar baked into the walls. It had been my dream retreat for years. A place to unplug, let the chaos of building code violations and budget fights fade, and just breathe. I only made it up a few weekends every couple of months, but each trip felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. That Friday afternoon, I pulled off the gravel road and smiled as we crested the ridge and saw the cabin through the trees. That smile didn't last long. Before I even turned off the engine, I spotted it. Red Solo cups scattered along the porch railing. One lay sideways on the top step, with a sticky smear of what looked like dried margarita syrup dripping toward the floorboards. At the base of the porch, 2 black trash bags crammed with aluminum cans, pizza boxes, and something that smelled distinctly like leftover shrimp cocktail gone septic in the sun. Jason wrinkled his nose and glanced at me. I didn't say a word. I unlocked the front door. Odd, it felt like the lock had more give than usual, and stepped inside to a wave of stale beer, cologne, and something sweeter underneath. Air freshener, probably. A bottle of tequila stood abandoned on the kitchen counter. In the living room, 2 ceramic plates were shattered beside the fireplace, and a folding chair, my folding chair, was bent at a weird angle like someone had used it for a stage dive. The hardwood floor bore streaks of scuffed shoe rubber, and one of the throw pillows had what looked like a wine stain in the shape of someone's ass. I felt the heat rising in my neck. Someone had been in my home. Not just been in it, occupied it. Partied in it like it was theirs. Like they had the goddamn key. I rushed to the breaker box. My security system ran on an independent panel wired into a backup battery. I opened the panel and saw it. Clean, deliberate cuts in the power leads. Not ripped, not gnawed by squirrels. Clipped. Someone had known exactly where to look and what to cut. They'd wanted the cameras dead. That made this more than trespassing. It was premeditated. Jason stood silently in the hallway, wide-eyed. "Did someone break in, Dad?" "No," I said flatly. "Someone's been breaking in." Repeatedly. I spent the next hour cataloging every sign of the invasion. The linens were mussed, like the beds had been used and poorly remade. The back door lock had scrape marks, like someone had tried a key that didn't quite fit. In the master bathroom trash bin, I found a used toothbrush, pink, and a half-empty travel-size bottle of dry shampoo. Someone had been living here. Someone thought they had a right. I didn't call the cops. Not yet. I'd been a building inspector too long to trust local enforcement blindly, especially out in the woods, where the nearest sheriff might be related to the trespasser by marriage or poker debt. Instead, I called my contractor buddy and asked him to overnight me a fresh set of outdoor trail cams, battery-powered, with cloud sync, and an indoor motion-activated unit with infrared. Jason and I cleaned as best we could, double-checked the door and window locks, and I changed the Wi-Fi password and cloud settings on my main system. The new cameras were mounted the next day, one by the driveway, one facing the footpath that led to the creek, one in the kitchen, and one hidden in the smoke detector casing in the living room. All uploaded directly to a secure cloud account I could access from anywhere. Then we locked up and drove home. I didn't sleep that night, not from fear, from rage. From the feeling that someone had taken something sacred and pissed all over it. Not just a house, my sanctuary, and I had a feeling this was only the beginning. A week passed before I got anything. I checked the cameras obsessively each day, but the feeds stayed still. No motion, no signs, just the wind nudging branches and a raccoon that briefly triggered the trail cam near the creek. I started to think maybe the party animals had moved on. That maybe the stink I'd scrubbed out of the rugs had been a fluke. But then, on Friday night, it all changed. It started with a notification on my phone just past 9 in the evening. Motion detected. Driveway cam. I was sitting in my truck outside a site inspection, halfway through a lukewarm coffee when the footage loaded. 2 vehicles pulled up. One was a black Suburban, the other a blue Jeep with mismatched panels and a bumper sticker that said, "Live, Laugh, Booze." I watched, half disbelieving, as people climbed out like clowns from a circus car. There were at least 10 of them. Bags in hands, drinks already open, laughing like this was their weekend getaway. One of them was a woman with short platinum hair and a flowing cardigan, the kind that screams white wine and bad decisions. Another was a man in a sheriff's polo shirt, his badge barely visible in the dark, but unmistakable. My jaw clenched. Then came the guy in the burgundy button-down, mid-40s, balding, talking too loudly on a Bluetooth headset. Yeah, we're up here now. It's that private cabin spot. The one I mentioned, the lady's place. She lets us use it all the time. The lady? They moved with confidence, like regulars, like tenants. The Jeep's driver pulled out a plastic bin labeled retreat supplies and set up a Bluetooth speaker on the porch, while someone else laid out charcuterie on my picnic table. One woman kicked off her shoes and twirled around on my deke like she was auditioning for an antidepressant commercial. I sat frozen in the cab of my truck, one hand gripping the phone, the other curled so tight into a fist my knuckles popped. But I didn't move yet. I needed more, needed them inside. 20 minutes later, the indoor camera in the living room flicked to life. They were in. Wine bottles came out, throw pillows tossed to the floor. The guy in the sheriff polo opened my liquor cabinet and poured himself 2 fingers of my 16-year single malt, like he'd paid for it. I stared at the screen as he said, "Can't believe that old guy sold the place. Good thing Gina still runs the weekends." Gina. That was it. A name. I called the local sheriff's department, calm as I could manage, and reported an active trespassing on my private property. I gave the address, deed number, and explicitly stated that I was the sole legal owner and that no one had been given permission to access the cabin. Then I got in my truck and drove. The mountain roads at night aren't friendly to a man running on fury and gas station caffeine. I hit the gravel road with headlights off, coasting until I could hear the distant thump of bass and laughter. They were deep in it, half drunk, loud, absolutely sure of their dominion. The porch was lit up like a wedding reception. I parked just beyond the ridge, took a flashlight, and made my way down the path on foot. When I stepped out into the clearing, it took a second for anyone to notice me. Then a few heads turned. A woman holding a wine glass narrowed her eyes. Can we help you?" I ignored her, walked right past the smirking 20-something holding a phone and into my own front door. The living room was full. People turned, startled, like I'd just walked into a hotel lobby and demanded they evacuate. "Everyone out," I said flatly. "This is my house. You're trespassing. Grab your things and get out. Now." The guy in the sheriff polo raised his hands in mock surrender. Hey, easy there. We've got permission, all right? Gina's got it covered." A woman, Gina I assumed, stepped forward. She had a tan leather folder in her hand and the kind of practiced fake sympathy smile that made my skin crawl. "Sir, I understand you're upset, but I have documentation here that proves our arrangement. We've been using this property for years without issue." I stared at the folder. "I own this cabin, purchased it outright. I never rented it. I don't know you, and I sure as hell didn't authorize this." She opened the folder and produced a page. A printed lease agreement dated over 2 years prior, signed in looping script at the bottom. The name on the lease, Robert Ames. The former owner, dead for over a year. Right then, headlights cut through the trees. The sheriff's SUV rolled into the clearing, lights flashing low. 2 deputies stepped out. One looked around and nodded to the man in the sheriff polo. "Hey, Dan," he smiled and waved. "Evening, boys." I turned to the uniformed officers. "They're trespassing on private property. I have the deed in my truck. I can show you. No lease, no arrangement, just a forged document and a party they had no right to throw." Gina held up the lease. "I have a signed agreement here. We've had a verbal understanding even after Robert passed." The taller deputy took the paper, examined it with mild interest, and looked back at me. "Sir, if there's a dispute over occupancy, this might be a civil matter. I can't arrest people based on conflicting paperwork unless there's clear evidence of a crime. They broke in. They're drinking on my porch. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a felony." "Sir," the deputy repeated, "unless you want to file a formal complaint with the county, I'd recommend you let this cool down and sort it legally." Jason's face flashed in my mind, asking if someone broke in. I took a breath, counted to 5. "Fine, let it cool down." I nodded slowly. "All right, I'll handle it legally. But take note, Everyone here just trespassed, and I'm going to get every one of their names." No one spoke as I left, but Gina smiled again. "See you next weekend, Cal." I didn't answer. I was already walking back to my truck. The next morning, I was in the county clerk's office before the coffee machine had finished sputtering. The woman at the front desk wore a gray cardigan and the look of someone who had seen too many arguments over fence lines and parking permits. I gave her my name, address, and deed number. She tapped for a moment on her keyboard and turned the monitor toward me. There it was, black and white, plain as day. The parcel was registered under my name, fully transferred from Robert Ames's estate 6 months ago. No liens, no easements, no rental agreements, no leases, verbal or otherwise, just me. I printed everything out and tucked it into a fresh folder labeled "Hell No Not Today." I was far from done. By midday, I was sitting across from Monica Lamb, a real estate attorney who had a reputation for tearing HOA boards apart with nothing but a yellow legal pad and a deadpan voice. I'd worked with her once before, on a commercial permit issue, and I knew she didn't blink easily. She flipped through the printouts while sipping cold coffee. "This lease they showed. Do you have a copy?" I slid her the screenshot from my cloud archive. "They showed it to me last night, claimed it was valid, signed by Robert Ames. He's been dead over a year." She squinted at the screen, zoomed in on the notary stamp, and chuckled dryly. "This notary's license was revoked in 2020. I remember the name, fraud case out of Asheville. This document wouldn't hold up in small claims court, let alone with the DA. You think we can press charges?" "I think we're about to." She pulled out a form. "We'll file a formal complaint with the district attorney's office today. Trespass, forgery, illegal subletting. It'll take a few days to initiate, but this is going on the books now." I nodded, trying to keep my adrenaline from boiling. "That's not all. I think they've been renting the cabin out." "Airbnb?" she asked without missing a beat. "Worse, private invites, no public listing, but I found their booking page. I have screenshots." I pulled up the site on my phone, a janky little page with lavender script and photos clearly taken inside my cabin, including one of someone doing yoga by the fireplace. The title read, "Hudson Mountain Escape, Exclusive Retreat for Creatives." I read the description aloud. "Secluded off-grid cabin for artists, healers, and conscious gatherings. Weekend slots available by invite only. Secure parking, forest access, private spring-fed pond." I scrolled to the bottom and showed her the user profile, Gina HR Retreats. Monica leaned back in her chair. "This is criminal enterprise territory. If she's collected money, hosted unlicensed events, maybe even sold alcohol, she's racking up violations. You said there was a sheriff's deputy involved?" I nodded. "He was drinking my whiskey on my porch, wearing the badge." She sighed, muttering, "Of course he was." Then she tapped her pen against the desk and looked me straight in the eye. "This is going to get messy. People like this don't stop until someone higher up tells them it's over. You okay with going public? Because once we press this, it's going to hit the local news." "Let it," I said. "I'm not letting them take another damn weekend." By the time I left her office, I'd already received an email alert from my camera feed. Another vehicle had driven up to the cabin that morning. Just one this time. A man and a woman unloading a cooler and a crate of what looked like folding chairs. I was getting tired of watching it happen in real time. I needed it to stop. Monica said give it 72 hours for the DA to respond. I planned to use every one of them. That evening, I started digging. I ran the Airbnb username through some tracking sites. Found connections to a Facebook group called Mountain Spirit Events, moderated by Gina Hudson. The banner photo, my goddamn pond. The cover event, Forest Moonlight Ceremony, invite only. I clicked through. There were over 75 people in the group. Some of them had posted photos from past ceremonies. I recognized the living room rug. One of them had captioned it, "Amazing retreat energy last weekend at Gina's cabin. Can't wait to go back." Another had written, "Still buzzing from that mountain fire circle. So grateful we have access to this magical space." I wasn't sure whether to scream or laugh. Magical space, my ass. I downloaded everything. Photos, names, dates, timestamps. Built a dossier thick enough to flatten a squirrel. Then I sent it to Monica, the DA's tip line, and just for fun, the local tax enforcement office. If they wanted to play business owner, they were going to get the full audit experience. By Monday afternoon, I got the call I'd been waiting for. The district attorney's office confirmed receipt of our complaint and said they were reviewing materials for potential criminal violations. That was lawyer speak for someone's ass is on the burner. I wasn't about to wait idly. I drove back up to the mountains that night, alone this time. Jason didn't need to be anywhere near what I expected to find. The cabin sat quiet when I arrived. Too quiet. No lights, no cars, no half-naked fire dancers twirling sage bundles in the driveway. But the moment I stepped onto the porch, I noticed a cigarette butt still smoldering on the railing. It was fresh. Someone had been here less than 10 minutes ago. Inside, the air smelled like a hotel after checkout. The beds were made, sloppily, and not the way I'd left them. A coffee mug still sat in the sink. Worse, the bathroom light was on and there were wet footprints on the tile. I drew my sidearm, not because I wanted trouble, but because, at that moment, I didn't know what the hell I was walking into. I cleared the house room by room. Empty. Then I checked the garage, which I hadn't really used. The side door had been forced, hinge bent like someone didn't have the patience to jiggle the key. Inside, an old futon, 3 folding chairs, and a tote full of event supplies. Candles, flyers, half a dozen cheap Bluetooth speakers. It was a mobile rave kit, basically. And on top of it all sat a manila folder labeled Guest Waivers. My pulse kicked up. I opened it. Inside were over 30 printed forms. Names, signatures, and dates, all written by hand, most scrawled like they were signed drunk or in the dark. Some of the guests had even written their email addresses. That was going to come in handy. I drove back into town and showed Monica. She blinked slowly. She had them sign waivers. This is going to be better than Christmas. We faxed the contents straight to the DA's office. Meanwhile, I took a different route. I emailed the 2 most recent signers. I didn't accuse them. I didn't threaten. I just said I was the legal property owner and was curious who had authorized their stay. One of them responded in less than an hour. Her name was Haley, and she was a yoga instructor from Raleigh. She apologized instantly, said she had no idea the property wasn't part of a private retreat service, and that she'd paid cash directly to Miss Gina, whom she'd met through a mutual friend. Her message ended with, "Please don't sue me. I can send you the texts and payment info if it helps." Did it help? You bet your ass it did. Haley forwarded screenshots from Gina, instructions for arriving quietly, a code to a key lockbox I didn't know existed, and even a set of house rules which included, I shit you not, please reset the security cameras each Sunday night before departure. That was the thread that unraveled everything. I went back to the cabin the next morning and scoured the exterior. Found the lockbox tucked inside a fake rock near the porch, one of those cheap landscaping decoys you buy from shady home improvement catalogs. Inside, a spare key. Not mine. When I got back home, there was a voicemail waiting from Airbnb. Someone in Trust and Safety wanted to discuss a listing discrepancy. Apparently, another host had reported Gina's retreat page after recognizing a photo of my damn cabin on 2 different listings. This was a turning point. The Airbnb rep confirmed Gina had multiple accounts under slight name variations, Gina HR Retreats, G Hudson Stay, and one under her husband's name, Mel H Hospitality. All listed the same general property, sometimes with the cabin's real photos, sometimes altered to include fake landscaping, but it was clearly the same damn place. That evening, Monica sent me a message. DA just opened a fraud investigation. They're pulling property records and booking data. Stay ready. I was more than ready. By Thursday, things started spiraling out of Gina's control, and for the first time, it looked like she knew it. That morning, I got a knock at my office door back in Charlotte. A man in a beige blazer stood there with a clipboard and a phony smile. "Mr. Cal Johnson." I nodded. "You've been served." He handed me a thick envelope and walked off like he was delivering pizzas instead of lawsuits. I flipped it open. Inside, a civil suit, filed by none other than Melvin Mel Hudson. The complaint was pure insanity. According to the filing, I had unjustly interfered with an ongoing verbal property usage agreement between the Hudsons and the late Robert Ames. They claimed to have hosted therapeutic events and community services on the land for years, and that I had caused them emotional trauma, business disruption, reputational damage, and violation of spiritual trust. They were asking for $250,000 in damages and a restraining order to prevent me from harassing guests or interfering with scheduled retreats. I laughed out loud in my office, loud enough for my assistant to ask if I was watching stand-up. "Nope," I said. Just reading the script for the stupidest movie never made. Monica's reaction was much colder. This is a distraction. They're trying to flip the narrative. If they think they can make you look like the unstable guy interfering with some crunchy yoga club, they might convince a civil judge to issue a stay on eviction or buy themselves more time to clean up their mess. She wasn't wrong. Public optics matter. I needed something better than paperwork. I needed a smoking gun. That came the next day when one of the past guests, a guy named Nate who'd attended a sound bath weekend, called me back. He'd seen my email. Apparently someone had forwarded my message to the whole retreat mailing list. I expected hostility. Instead, he said, "Hey man, I had no idea. Honestly, I thought it was weird when Gina told us not to post photos publicly. But I've got some, if you want them." And texts. He had photos of guests sitting on my porch, using my grill floating in the pond on inner tubes. One video showed Mel handing out retreat tokens for a silent meditation challenge. In another, Gina was explaining how to disable the motion sensors in the Sacred Hall, aka my living room, but the gold came in a screenshot. Nate had paid via Venmo. The memo line: weekend access, Hudson Cabin. The name on the receiving account: Gina M. Hudson. I sent it all straight to Monica. 10 minutes later, she called me. That's it. That's business activity. No license, no taxes, no insurance. We're filing a complaint with the Department of Revenue and with state investigators. I've also reached out to Airbnb's legal department directly. They're about to drop her like a hot coal. Meanwhile, I kept eyes on the cabin via my cloud feeds. The Hudsons hadn't been back, but someone had, probably a cleanup crew. 2 men showed up in an unmarked van, spent 3 hours moving boxes out of the garage, then left. I managed to catch the plates. The next day, sheriff's deputies visited the cabin, not to party, to search. DA had pulled a warrant. The hidden key, the event materials, the guest waivers, the booking records. It all counted. And when the deputies left, they didn't just lock the place up. They taped it. Crime scene tape. Yellow. Bold. I stood in my driveway when the photos came in, just staring at the screen. It felt surreal. My cabin, my quiet forest getaway, now the centerpiece of a fraud investigation. And still, it wasn't over. That same evening, I received another notification. Gina had launched a GoFundMe. Help Gina and Mel save the Hudson Retreat. It claimed their sacred event space had been stolen by a vindictive stranger and that they were the victims of a smear campaign. There were photos of the pond, my hammock, even a shot of the old rocking chair I'd refinished myself. They'd already raised $1,200. I couldn't believe it. Actually, no. That's a lie. I could believe it. Some people will fund anything if the background filter is warm enough. But now the gloves were off. The GoFundMe hit $15,000 by Monday morning. $15,000. People were sending them money like they were victims of a natural disaster instead of 2 grifters who'd been squatting in my forest hideaway and slinging sage sticks over stolen floorboards. The page was filled with comments like, "Stay strong, Gina," and "This is a spiritual attack by capitalist greed." One person even claimed they'd found healing on my porch, as if the Adirondack chair had performed a baptism. I forwarded it all to Monica, who was already neck-deep in filing a cease and desist demand to the crowdfunding platform. Her email reply was short: "I'm going to have so much fun with this." Meanwhile, Mel decided to go full throttle on their descent into delusion. He sent a letter to my attorney's office, typed, signed, and notarized, this time by someone who actually existed, declaring that I had willfully broken the spiritual agreement of sanctuary between the Hudson family and the land itself, and that he was seeking a temporary injunction to halt what he called desecration of a sacred space. Monica read it twice. "This isn't just fraud anymore," she muttered. "This is performance art with legal stationery." Then the local news caught wind of it. I don't know who tipped them off. Maybe one of the retreat members, maybe someone in the sheriff's office. But by midweek, a bright-eyed reporter named Tasha Welch was standing on the gravel road near my gate doing a stand-up segment for the evening. News. I watched the footage online, jaw clenched. The quiet town of Cedar Run is at the center of an unusual legal dispute involving a secluded cabin, an alleged spiritual retreat, and a pair of controversial figures accused of trespassing, fraud, and operating an illegal business. The property owner, a Charlotte-based building inspector, claims he never authorized the events, while the retreat's organizers insist they were carrying on a long-standing tradition with the previous owner's blessing. They aired a brief clip from one of Gina's promotional videos, where she stood barefoot in front of my pond, arms spread like she was summoning moonlight. "Every piece of this land speaks," she said dreamily. "We're not just renting a place. We're restoring a legacy." They cut back to Tasha. Court documents suggest otherwise. That was the turning point. The next day, 3 more former guests contacted me privately. All said the same thing. They had no idea they weren't supposed to be there. One had paid over $900 for a silent detox weekend, where she was told to leave her phone at the gate and not ask questions. Another said Mel had warned them not to talk to any locals because the town was hostile to outsiders. Each of them sent receipts. And then came the kicker, an anonymous tip sent to Monica's office via encrypted email. The sender claimed to be a former assistant of Gina's, someone who'd helped manage the guest list, clean up the property, and disable the security cameras. They attached a detailed list of dates, guests, payment methods, and even the names of other properties where similar schemes had been run. There were 3, all cabins, all isolated, all purchased in the last 2 years by elderly owners with no next of kin. Gina and Mel had used fake documents, phony leases, and short-term listings under pseudonyms to run their operations. In one case, the property owner had been in assisted living while they were hosting drum circles in his backyard. This wasn't just a couple pulling a fast one with my cabin. This was a blueprint. Monica brought the dossier directly to the district attorney's office. The fraud case ballooned overnight. Multiple jurisdictions got involved. Investigators showed up at the Hudson's primary residence. Turns out it was a rented duplex with overdue HOA fines and a disassembled hot tub in the yard. By Friday, both Gina and Mel were served with formal charges: wire fraud, real estate fraud, unlawful business operation, tax evasion, and criminal trespass. The GoFundMe was frozen. Their accounts were flagged. And Airbnb officially banned both names and associated IPs from the platform. But the Hudsons didn't go quietly. No. Gina went live on Instagram. She sat in her backyard under a faded sun umbrella, holding a mug that said, "Good vibes only." Her voice quivered with controlled rage as she spoke into the camera. "This is what happens when you try to hold sacred space in a broken world. We are being persecuted by men with money and power who fear spiritual sovereignty. But our community is strong, and we will rise." I didn't finish watching. I was too busy handing over her old guest list to a state investigator. The arraignment was surreal. I sat in the back of the courtroom next to Monica, dressed in a suit that still smelled faintly of sawdust, watching Gina and Mel shuffle into the chamber in matching beige outfits that I assume weren't coordinated, but still managed to scream, "We're in this cosmic tragedy together." They looked tired. Not spiritual, not persecuted, just tired. Gina didn't make eye contact with me. Mel did, though. One quick, bitter glance that barely registered before he turned away, like the air in the room had gone sour. Their lawyer, a slick-looking guy in a navy suit with the energy of a used car salesman who reads crystals, immediately began arguing that the Hudsons were peaceful community facilitators being railroaded by bureaucratic overreach. The judge didn't even flinch. The list of charges took 10 minutes to read aloud: fraud, trespassing, falsification of documents, operating a business without a license, tax evasion, wire fraud, possession of stolen property. Apparently, they'd taken more from the cabin than I'd realized, including antique kitchenware and a pair of handmade tools from the workshop. And then came the final charge: conspiracy to commit large-scale real estate fraud across multiple counties. That one hit like a mallet. I saw Gina's jaw twitch. Mel whispered something to their lawyer, who didn't bother responding. The judge denied bail. That moment was quieter than I expected. No outbursts, no gasps, just the sound of a single pen clicking at the prosecutor's table. The bailiff stepped forward, and just like that, Gina and Mel were led away, their wrists bound, their sacred mission now reduced to a stack of evidence and a list of victims. Monica leaned toward me. "We're winning this. But don't take your foot off the gas." And I didn't. In the weeks that followed, the case exploded across the regional media. Local stations ran segments about the retreat fraud duo, complete with dramatic drone footage of the cabin and pixelated screenshots of the Hudson's events. State investigators traced their activities to 2 other properties in Tennessee and West Virginia. Those owners, an elderly woman recovering from a stroke and a widower living in assisted care, had no idea their homes were being rented out to strangers in hemp pants and festival beads. Airbnb reached out and offered a formal apology. They issued me a modest but sincere compensation package and publicly updated their fraud reporting and vetting policies. That felt like a win. But the real victory came in civil court. Gina and Mel's lawsuit against me? Dismissed with prejudice. Monica didn't just argue it into the ground. She salted the earth afterward. We countersued for damages, including property repairs, legal fees, and emotional distress. When presented with our evidence, the hacked security system, the falsified documents, the recorded testimonies from former guests, the court didn't deliberate long. We were awarded full damages. The Hudsons' remaining assets, what little they had, were seized. Their GoFundMe money reallocated through court order to compensate affected property owners. I stood outside the courthouse after the verdict, watching reporters swarm Monica for a quote. I let her handle it. She was better with microphones. I preferred the quiet. My kind of quiet, the kind you get on your own land, surrounded by trees that don't judge, and a pond that doesn't want a guest list. Back at the cabin, the crime scene tape had long since come down. The floors had been refinished, the lock system replaced with a biometric gate, and just beyond the porch, I installed a new sign. Bigger, bolder, private property. Not for sale, not for parties. Trespassers will be prosecuted. I thought about making the last line blink in neon, but subtlety won. That night, I lit a fire in the hearth, poured myself a bourbon, sat in the silence I'd fought for, and for the first time in months, I slept without checking the cameras. It's been 4 months since the verdict, and the forest is quiet again. Not the kind of silence that creeps after chaos. This one is earned, settled. A silence with weight and warmth, like a thick blanket pulled over a cold season. The cabin is mine again, in every sense of the word. No strangers, no parties, no incense wafting through the walls like a failed seance. Just birds, wind, and the occasional squirrel who still thinks the deck railing is part of some rodent highway. I still get emails from time to time, people who'd attended one of Gina's retreats and now want to apologize. A few even offered to help repair the damage, physically, financially, spiritually, whatever that means. I thanked them, told them I was fine, and I was, because I'd taken everything back. The guest book Gina used to keep on the table? Gone. I burned it in the fire pit behind the cabin, page by page, while sipping whiskey from the same bottle that damn sheriff's deputy had swiped a pour from months earlier. It felt appropriate. The cabin is better than it ever was. I installed reinforced locks, motion sensors, and a whole perimeter alert system that pings my phone before a vehicle even rounds the curve in the access road. There's a new camera too, hidden, silent, with a 1 terabyte looped backup. Call it paranoia. I call it peace of mind. Airbnb quietly settled with me for a figure I won't repeat aloud, but it was enough to cover every expense, every court filing, every insult. Enough to plant a few trees, fix the siding, and maybe finally replace the roof shingles that Robert never got around to dealing with. And as for the Hudsons, Mel pled out. Took a deal, 8 years, minimum security, no possibility of parole for 3. Gina didn't. She tried to fight, made a show of it, cried in court, talked about energy, trauma, sacred duty, but the jury didn't buy it. The evidence was too clear, the manipulation too bold. 12 years, state prison, 2 more pending charges in Tennessee, and a federal case under review. I don't check the news much anymore. When her sentencing made the local paper, I barely skimmed the headline. I was too busy sanding a new deck chair I'd started building with Jason. He still asks questions sometimes. About the retreat, the parties, the people who came into our place like it belonged to them. Why'd they do it? He asked me last weekend. I shrugged. Because they thought they could. And that was enough. The neighbors don't bother me anymore. In fact, I've become something of a cautionary tale in these parts. The guy who bought the sacred cabin, fought a cult, and won. The inspector who took on a spiritual Airbnb mafia and got his porch back. I can live with that. There's a new sign at the front of the drive. It's big, made of carved oak, bolted into a stone base, and it reads, "Private property, not for sale, not for parties. Trespassers will be prosecuted." Underneath, in smaller type, "We've done this before. We'll do it again. Every now and then someone drives by slow enough to read the whole thing. They don't come up the road after that. Good.